I'm going to show you a system that I use to develop bass drum independence in grooves. And for this, I'm going to take a very simple example with the sticks. It's just going to be like a slow funk 16th note groove. One hand on the hi-hat playing all 16ths, snare drum backbeat with a rim click. And I've partly picked that because I'm playing every 16th in the bar, so you've got a reference for all of these. Incidentally, when you practice these, make sure you're using a click and that you're counting. I'm sure you are. Doesn't hurt to have a reminder occasionally. So, first step, we're going to make sure that we can play a single bass drum note in all the 16 places in the bar. So just go through each one in turn. Make sure not only that you can play it, but that it feels nice. It's not forced. You're not trying to squeeze the note into place. It feels comfortably in the slot. Some of these are going to take a lot more work than others to get together. That's just how it happens. So there's nothing wrong if you're spending ages on one particular place and the next one along is no bother at all. That's perfectly fine and normal. Yeah, it's worth keeping that in mind. I'm just going to go through the first few of these just so you get the idea. I'm sure this is pretty obvious, but why not? So, bass on the 1. Okay, on the E, which is the second partial. Bass on the and of 1, on the ander, so the third part of the first beat. And bass on the E of 1, 1E and Now this one's just before the snare drum on the 2. You can probably hear that one doesn't sit as nicely for me, so that's the one I'm going to go and work on. Okay, so let's imagine you've gone through the entire 16 places. If you want to save a bit of time, you can just do half of the measure, because obviously the second half is the same as the first half. Assuming that what you're doing on the hi-hat and the snare drum is the same in both halves of the bar. If it's not, definitely don't skimp and make sure you have done the bass drum in the second half as well as in the first half. Great, so let's take that as read. We've done the bass drum in all our places as a single note. The next stage is to do a pair of notes. So I'm going to put two notes next to each other, so this could be the 1 and the E, or the E and the and the and the next beat. And again, go through those 16 placements of this and make sure they all work nicely. Steve Gadd talks a lot about things being comfortable, and this is a great thing to aim for. If you're playing and it feels like, oh yeah, this is, I've always been able to do this, or it feels like the most natural thing ever, then you're definitely onto a winner. So I'll try the first few of these. Bass on the 1 and the E of 1. Bass on the 1E and the 1 and. Bass on the 1 and the 1 so the last two partials of the first beat. last one for now, the 1 and the 2. And because my second bass note is also with my snare drum, that's a danger point to look out for. When 2 or more things coincide, we've got to be really careful that they're lining up cleanly. Etc, etc. So, and again you'd go through all the possible places of these. You then want to start working on combinations of singles and doubles. And there are plenty of possibilities here. So you can be systematic if you like. I would probably go straight for reading some examples such as the New Breed pages, and work through a few kind of ready-made examples. There are a couple of short phrases that I like to use. You could go to 3s and 4s in a row. It's good development for your bass drum foot. Personally, I don't use them an awful lot. So the 3 note groupings that I do are either a single then a double with 1 note off in between, or the other way around, a double and then a single again with a gap in between. So if this is my 1E-ander, I could play a double and a single, 1E and like so. Let's try that. And then I'd move that whole pattern through the beat 1 note to the right. So now the double is on the 1E and the single is on the 2. Hope this makes sense. Okay, etc. And you can move those through, and then you would work through the other way around. So that's the single and then the double. These are great little phrases to use, and there are two more basic concepts that I like to work up. These are based around 3s and 5s. I'll quickly explain what I mean here. So with 3s, I'm going to play a single note and I'm going to do it every 3rd 16th. So that's 1E and 2E and 3E and 4E and 1E and etc. Okay, and this is going to take 3 whole bars until it comes back to land on the 1. So that's a good check to see if you've got lost. It would sound like this. I'll do the whole 3-bar phrase. Okay, so that's 1 note out of 3. We can also do 2 notes out of 3. This one is pretty much just a stamina builder for your bass drum foot. Anyway, here's how it sounds. Okay, so there's a lot going on down there. The 5s, very similar concept, so now instead of every 3rd 16th, we play a note every 5 16ths. So if it's a single, it's going to get later each beat. 1E and 2E and 3E and 4E and 1E and 2. Can you hear it getting later each time? Firstly it's the beat, then it's on the E of the next beat, then the and of the next beat, then the of the following beat, then it misses a beat, and then it's back on the beat again. And then we can do 2 notes out of 5, and these could either be the first 2 notes, or something that I think sounds a lot more musical, it's the first and 3rd note of the 5. So that would be like 1E and 2E and 3E and 4E and 1E and 2E and etc. These are great things to experiment with. You can get some good musical material out of this stuff, even if you might think when you start it that it's just a bit of an intellectual exercise. The 3s and the 5s are quite mathsy to start with, and when I started doing them I had to write them down so I could see when I was playing a note how it fitted with the other things I was doing. Yes, and if that applies to you, absolutely do that. Get it out of your head onto some paper, see how it lines up so you can follow it through as you're playing. You don't have to do that, and ultimately I think it's good to be able to get your head away from the paper for these sorts of exercises, and then you will find, given long enough, that you start to play some of this phrasing in music that you're making. These things have a great way of creeping in. So yeah, go to town with this, experiment a little bit, and see what happens. Also, don't forget that this is a bass drum development system, but you need to be able to do this against all kinds of things with your hands. So don't just limit yourself to one groove option. So like I said before, I used 16th notes so that we could hear all the 16ths going on the hi-hats. But you could quite easily play it with like a standard rock 8th note backbeat thing. So let's give you an example of that. I'm going to do 2 notes out of 5 over just a standard rock beat. So my bass drum, I'm thinking 16ths, but you're only hearing 8th notes up here. Does that make sense? I'm going to go 1 E and a, 2 E and a. In other words, half of the bass drum notes you hear are going to be in the cracks between hi-hat notes. Sounds a bit like this. And there's your whole 5-bar phrase. Have fun.